Hello everyone. I hope you're having a good week. This is our 6th Midweek Encouraging Word. I can't believe it. If you watched Governor Ivey's press conference yesterday, you know that Alabama has not yet met these standards for us to enter what she called Phase 1, which would allow us to have worship services with some strict social distancing in place. So what that means for us practically is that it looks like we will be having worship service video service on May 3rd, I wrote this down, May 3rd, May 10th, and May 17th as well. Now on May 15th, the governor said she'd be making another announcement and we may move to this different phase, but it would be really too hard to work things out for the church in such a short time. So it's looking like we'll have a video service on the 17th as well. That also means that our anniversary celebration, which was scheduled for May the 6th, that'll be pushed back until June. We'll give you some notice about that. Well, that was a little bit disappointing to me to hear a press conference, but I trust that God has put in place the right leaders and we need to follow them. Remember, Romans says that the civil authority is God's minister here on earth to wield the sword and to protect the common good. So we trust that our leaders are doing that and want to honor them in that. Let me tell you an answered prayer. I mentioned that we were going to try to start streaming our worship services live, especially when we start back and we know that some people aren't going to be able to come for health concerns and so forth. We want to be able to include them Sunday morning in our worship service. It looked like that was going to be difficult because everybody's trying to do it and it's hard to get equipment, but praise God, people prayed and that was answered. Jonathan Knappenberger was able to find the equipment that we need, and so over these next 2 weeks or so we'll get that worked out, and so we'll be able to hit the ground running when we have our first public worship service to live stream as well, so those of you who need to stay home will be able to worship with us. Well, my encouraging word this morning is a verse from Isaiah chapter 22. This is over the years I've come up with several different prayer verses that I've come back to over and over again that help me understand the nature of prayer. And this is one that I encountered some years ago, and it's going to sound a little bit odd, but let me explain it to you. The prophet Isaiah is talking to the people of Jerusalem, and he reprimands them. He takes them to task. And this is what he says to them. You built a reservoir between the two walls for the water of the old pool, but you did not look to the one who made it or have regard for the one who planned it long ago. Now, here's what he's talking about. He was anticipating the invasion of the Babylonians, and he knew that what the residents of Jerusalem would do is they would attend to their water source. You have to have water when you're under siege. And they would build this reservoir between these two walls. And he says, you did that, but you didn't ask God for help. You had no regard for the Lord in preparing for that siege by preparing this reservoir full of water. Now here's what's interesting about that, is that earlier in Israel's history, when the Assyrians invaded, good old King Hezekiah, a very godly man, he did this very thing in preparation for the siege. He made sure that there was this reservoir between the walls so that the city would have water. And of course, he's commended for what he did. And so what is Isaiah taking the Israelites to task for here? It's for their lack of prayer in pursuing their plans. Now here's what that means practically. It means that you could have a person who prays and is repentant and is close to God and seeks God's grace and wisdom, and you could have someone who does none of those things. And in a particular situation, they might come to the very same conclusions about what needs to be done. We need to make sure there's a water reservoir, so when our enemies come and lay siege to the city, we have water to drink. And yet one of them is commended for submitting these plans to God and seeking Him in prayer, and the other is condemned and taken to task by the prophet. And so what that means for us, boy, this hits me hard, is that in all of our planning, And everything that we seek to do, we need to submit that to God in prayer. And why is that? Well, Isaiah says in doing that, you have regard for the Lord. In other words, you honor Him. And I think there's a practical benefit to us as well, because as we do this, when we see good things happen and our plans come together, it kind of humbles us, and it makes us realize that God's hand has been in this all along, that we've needed Him. And I mean, I can just tie it to this video thing that we're doing, the live streaming. All churches are doing it. It's the sort of thing you could just do without prayer. But I want to thank those of you. I asked several of you in church to pray that we would get this equipment, and I want to thank you for that. And because of that, we can say God's in this, and we hope that He'll be honored, and we'll be humbled before Him when it all comes together. Well, I want to encourage you with that word. I'll give you the reference again. It's Isaiah 22, verse 11. You can read that whole passage. God bless you, and we'll see you, Lord willing, Sunday morning, our video worship service. Take care and have a good week.